Madam Speaker, Don Young served in this chamber for nearly 5 decades, for nearly 50 years. Prior to that, he was a teacher, he was a trapper, he was a gold miner, he was a boat captain, a legislator. Incredible background for somebody to serve in this chamber. Such a diverse background and diverse experiences. I was in a meeting with him last year where in the White House, and he stood up to President Biden and he said, "I need a picture with you." He said, "I've had a picture with 9 other presidents and I need one with you." And I mean, just think about that, with 9 other presidents that he worked with, that he served with. The history there is unbelievable. Everybody in this chamber has a Don Young story. Everybody has an interaction that's incredibly memorable. One of them that I won't forget is when we were at the White House and a bill was being signed into law that opened up the energy production in Alaska in an area. I think he told me he had been working on this for 30 years. And he was so excited about it, and he turned around and looks back and he says, "What I lack in intelligence, I make up for in perseverance." 30 years to get something done, but he wasn't going to stop. And there's so many stories about Don Young and that famous knife. That knife has been pulled out and involved in so many stories across that 50 years. I'll bet that everybody in this chamber has a story about that knife. I believe there's been over 2,170 members of the House that served with Don Young, and I think that all of them have a story of the knife. I was standing in the back of the Kennan caucus room during a conference meeting where there was a heated discussion about changes in directed spending, and Don Young took it to the back of the room with the then Speaker of the House, John Boehner, and Don is right up in Speaker Boehner's face. I think that this is covered in Speaker Boehner's book, but right up in his face, and he's yelling at him, and Don takes that knife out, and to be clear, it was not opened, but he had that knife right at the Speaker's neck. And the Speaker's security detail starts walking in, and Boehner looks at him, and he's like, "No, he's harmless." There's so many stories, and they're all true. So many more. But I also want to say that while many people view this and believe this is the Don Young with the scowl that's portrayed in the media, I think this is the Don Young that so many of us actually know. Don Young would swear, he would scream, he would yell, he'd have his growls and his scowl. But this is the Don Young that we knew. He was a grizzly bear on the outside, but Don Young was a teddy bear on the inside. I've been subjected to the yelling and screaming and cursing and everything else. And I finally realized after years that I could just go to him and just say, "Don, shut up." And he would just make that face and start chuckling. The biggest teddy bear of a man. But, you know, there's a lot more to Don Young. This is Don Young and Congressman George Miller, who was the ranking member of the House Resources Committee. This was in the late 90s. Don Young actually enacted 123 pieces of legislation. One of the most successful legislators to ever serve in this body. This picture was taken, this is Congressman Chris John of Louisiana, after years of negotiation among these folks, as well as the famous Congressman John Dingell of Michigan and Congressman Billy Tozan of Louisiana. This was a landmark conservation legislation that these guys worked on. Don recognized the art of the deal. He recognized when you could actually get something done working together with other people. And I'll say it again, with 123 bills signed into law. The guy was an amazing legislator. He was also tough as nails, something that people don't know, and I'll go ahead and violate his HIPAA privacy here. Don Young was scheduled to have back surgery this week. He goes into the doctor, had been having back pain, and folks remember him walking around with a cane. He goes and gets a back x-ray and an MRI. He had a broken back. He had a broken back and was walking around continuing to do his job, fighting for the people of Alaska with a broken back. This guy, I'll say it again, was tough as nails. Madam Speaker, to the citizens of Alaska, I'd like to tell you that this guy absolutely bled for your state. He fought for it, he defended it, and he bled for the state of Alaska. And I'll tell you that I know this because I worked for him. I had the honor of working for Chairman Young on the Transportation Committee. And it was always, always Alaska first. There's a huge alumni class of hundreds and hundreds of people. I would tease Don all the time that I was the only person that was able to overcome the stigma of Don Young and make something of myself. And I want to be clear, I said that in jest to the hundreds of Don Young alumni that are out there that are a phenomenal group of people. Some people advocate for term limits in this body, and I agree. I think that term limits should happen. I think that some people, when they're here for 2 weeks, it's pretty clear they should be term limited. But I'll also tell you that Don Young, after nearly 5 decades fighting for the state of Alaska, he shouldn't have been subjected to term limits. He fought for that state every single day. On the Wednesday before his death, he and I stood right over in the side of the chamber. He was in his wheelchair, and we had a conversation. And he was talking about the House versus the Senate. He was talking about how in the Senate, his senators had to work together and figure it out. But he talked about how for Alaska, he was the people's voice. He was the only one. He was the people's voice. There was no delegation to fight with or negotiate with. It was Don, a state that's nearly 1/5 the size of the continental United States, 3 times the state of Texas. Take that, Texas. Many people believe that the fact that Alaska has 1 member of Congress is because of a pesky little thing called the census or counting population or the Constitution. Madam Speaker, I submit to this body that the reason the state of Alaska has just 1 member is because all you needed was Don Young. Madam Speaker, I yield as much time as she may consume to the distinguished gentlelady from California, the Speaker of the House.